Hey guys, Kevin here with Kingpin Social, and I'm going to talk to you today about a concept called building parallels between skill sets. So in the last video, we talked about how relationships are actually everything. This means that if you can exchange value with something, if you can like something or dislike something, love something or hate something, you can build a relationship with it. This also means that everything can be paralleled to relationships. So the next concept that you have to understand that human beings are creatures of habit. And not just habit, but parallels as well as patterns. For example, when you look into the sky and you see the clouds, oftentimes you don't see clouds, you see dragons, or you see faces, or you see other patterns that you recognize from before. So naturally, we are all programmed to think in this way, to build parallels, to see patterns, and to recognize different habits. So let's take a look at some examples and applications of building parallels. So for example, if you take a couple of skill sets, say basketball, and you want to compare basketball to soccer, or even to dance, or music, or even math, or even socializing. All of these things are different skill sets. And now, to build the parallels, and there are different things that line up between all of them. And this is essentially where we start to look for patterns. So in the beginning, what parallel exists between all of them? Well, that's the learning phase. Oops. In between all of these things, the way that you approach it is by learning the foundation. So whether it's basketball, whether it's dance, whether it's mathematics, the way that you approach the learning process is the same. You have to be well versed in the foundation. After you start to learn some concepts within that skill set, the next parallel between all of them, which is practice. Without practice, none of these skill sets will actually develop. The way that you practice basketball versus the way that you practice dance versus the way that you practice music or math or even socializing, all of these things have similarities, and you can start to build the parallels between all of them. So let's just say you've learned something and you've practiced it a couple of times. What next? Well, if you're going to apply it, you need to warm up. So a basketball warm-up versus a soccer warm-up versus a dance warm-up, all of these things have similarities. So if you can build the parallels between them, you can actually start to realize the proper way to approach the warm-up. For example, in basketball, you're going to be warming up the skills that you're going to be using while you're playing the game. Just like in dance, before you perform, you're going to be warming up the movements that you're going to be using in that performance. And then game time. So whether it's an actual game like basketball or football or soccer, or whether you're actually performing as a musician or as a dancer, or whether you're writing a test in math, This is where the application of that skill actually comes in. And finally, you look for feedback. And these are just a couple of the parallels that you can see between all of these skills, that all of these different elements exist. So now, if we look a little bit deeper, you start to realize that the depth in a relationship is going to determine the depth upon which you can build parallels. So that means if I have a limited knowledge of basketball, I'll only be able to build parallels in that same limited way to other skill sets. But if I have a very intimate relationship or very intimate knowledge with basketball, I'll be able to build parallels very deeply to other levels. And there's a quote that I heard from a famous Japanese swordsman named Musashi. And the quote was, "If you know the way broadly, you will see it." Oops, sorry. In all things. So, if we look at the skill set of math and the skill set of building relationships, we can look more in depth at the parallels that exist. So in math, you have something called a number line. And in relationships, these same parallels exist. So if you think, at a zero exchange of value, the type of relationship that exists is a stranger. But if you exchange a very large amount of value, the relationship that you have could be closer to family. Versus if someone takes a large amount of value from you, it's subtracted from you, then that would equal your enemy. And so even based off of the value that you're exchanging, you can start to see the types of relationships that will also develop. And that will be the topic of my next video. If you enjoyed what you saw, if you have any questions, any comments, leave them down. And feel free to check out our blog, kingpinsocial.com or kingpinlifestyle.com, and let us know what you think.